Always true.
For the first time since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, a NATO member has formally invoked Article 4, the alliance's emergency clause for consultations, after what Estonia called an unprecedentedly brazen airspace violation. In September, 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets entered Estonian airspace without flight plans, transponders, or radio contact. They remained there for almost 12 minutes before being intercepted by NATO aircraft. For Estonia, it was the 4th airspace breach this year and, officials say, the most serious yet. For a country sharing a nearly 300-kilometre border with Russia, each violation feels less like a provocation, more like a test of NATO's reaction time and its credibility. As Washington's signals to Europe become increasingly uncertain and President Donald Trump questions the cost of collective defence, Estonia once again finds itself on the fault line between deterrence and danger. So what happens when warnings go unanswered and diplomatic patience starts to look like weakness? Will this be a moment when NATO's resolve is truly tested? Estonia's Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna talks to Al Jazeera. Margus Tsahkna, welcome to Talk to Al Jazeera. Estonia formally triggered Article 4 after what your government called an unprecedentedly brazen incursion by 3 Russian MiG-31s. Article 4, of course, is the consultation mechanism of the NATO alliance. But what exactly are you asking NATO to do? Are we talking about deterrence moves, more fighters, armed drones, a change in the rules of engagement? What would an adequate NATO response look like?
Indeed, Russia violated heavily and brutally Estonian airspace with 3 fighter jets for 12 minutes, which is really brutal. We have never seen it before. And it was in the pattern of earliest attack against Poland with the drones. And as well later we saw some hybrid actions in Copenhagen airport and Munich. And we have increase of these Russian tests in our region. And we call, as a member state of NATO, as well, as you mentioned, Article 4 consultations. As well, we called as well the United Nations Security Council meeting to show the unity is one part that Putin is testing, that NATO is united. Putin is trying to divide Europe and the US from each other. But also we called to increase the deterrence and also the military capabilities on the eastern flank. Because after attack against Poland with the drones, Poland called as well Article 4, and we as a NATO started the mission Eastern Sentry, which is a military mission towards eastern flank. And in the frame of that, now we have agreed that we will increase the surveillance as well, the air defense and the border defense capabilities on the eastern flank. And this is now on the military planning. So we have some results on that. Right. This is exactly what we need to do as a member state.
Foreign Minister, let me ask you this. Do you believe that Moscow was merely testing the alliance or checking to see whether there would be any consequences for any kind of incursion like this?
Moscow is testing us already years, and this was exactly something on the new level, because they were not drones, they were pilots with fighter jets entering to NATO airspace, and for 12 minutes, and it's a long time. So Putin is testing our societies, Putin is testing our reactions on military level as a NATO, and I can assure you that it was very solid based on the agreed procedures. And as well, if there would have been immediate military threat to us, I'm sure that NATO could have shot these planes down as well. But I think that mainly what Putin trying to test is the unity of NATO between different member states, but also mainly between Europe and US. But he failed this time heavily, because after our called United Nations Security Council, President Trump was very clear about his language about Russia, about supporting more Ukraine. But as well, he said very clearly that if next time the fighters will come and violate NATO airspace, and we see the threat, we will shoot them down.
For
so the
Minister, I just wonder,
and the
Foreign
language
Minister,
is exactly the same that Putin understands.
I wonder how many next times there can be. You've mentioned already NATO's new posture, Operation Eastern Sentry. How do we know that it's actually working, given the Estonian government has confirmed at least 4 violations of airspace this year? Is this just performative, or is there actually something concrete coming out of this new NATO posture?
NATO has this posture already. This air patrolling, what we have in our territories of the Baltic states, they have procedures. If there will be the immediate military threat to our sovereignty, so everything will happen. So we don't need to change it here. But the case is that Putin is pushing more heavily the new level, different tests of the NATO airspace on the ground. So NATO is responding solidly, but we need to respond as well on all the different cases what Russia is doing, and he's increasing the heat in our region.
If Russia is indeed changing its tactics and probing NATO's defensives, I wonder to what extent NATO is responding appropriately as well. Do some procedures potentially need changing? I understand that NATO pilots are still required in some cases to make visual confirmation before firing. I mean, shouldn't the alliance pre-authorize electronic jamming or cheaper intercepts instead of waiting for this visual ID, for instance?
NATO has all these military capabilities right now, what is needed. And we as a Baltic states invest together with NATO and European Union as well to our drone wall, as we call it, which is meant for the new level, different invasions or distributions. So this is something what we do anyways. But we need to understand as well that we need to react based on the real situation. And this time as well, the NATO response was very solid and very appropriate. So we don't need to create new NATO. We have everything there already. But one thing I need to assure you as well, that we don't see actually that Russia is having any kind of full-scale military capabilities the other side of our borders to start full-scale aggression, because they are stuck in Ukraine. And the truth is as well that they're struggling in Ukraine. They're not gaining any strategic breakthroughs on the battlefield. They are more terrorizing civil people. So we just need to be cool. We must be ready for the tests. And also we know for the future that Russia will remain the aggressive country for the NATO.
Previous security analysis has suggested that if Russia wanted to, it could take Estonia within 48 hours. We're not talking about passive defence here. We're talking about potentially a preemptive readiness that you've suggested there. Would you ever authorise engagement inside Estonian airspace without prior NATO clearance?
The first thing is that I don't know who are these analysts. They are totally in the wrong way, in the meaning that we have increased our own national capabilities. We have British, France and US troops located to Estonia and integrated to our military solutions, and also we are ready to act from the first second. So,
but would you be prepared to act unilaterally? Would you be prepared to act unilaterally? Is my question.
Of course, this is our duty as every member state of NATO as well to act from the first second, and we will do it definitely. And we have lots of capabilities on ground to do it. So. I don't follow this narrative that Estonia or Latvia, Lithuania next, because if anybody's coming, we are going to fight from the first second.
Do you fear being deliberately goaded into some kind of military action against Moscow, whether it be a flashpoint on the border or something more substantial and significant?
If we see anything which is going to the full-scale aggression, so we see it already a couple of months before, because Russia has no troops the other side of our borders. When I was defense minister 2016 and 17, we saw 120,000 troops ready to go within 48 hours the other side of our borders. And these troops literally were sent to Ukraine and they're dead. They're not existing anymore. So if Russia is planning to remove their troops from Ukraine and preparing for the full-scale invasion against NATO, we'll see it, before. But of course, this kind of tests, what they are planning or doing, they don't need full scale of military capabilities. And for that, we have a solid response from NATO side and as well our own independent on national level.
I appreciate your coolness in the face of what is, nevertheless, however you want to rotate this, a palpable threat from your very large neighbour to the east. Estonia's faced internet cable cutting and sabotage before. Add to that, there have been reports of Russian ships sailing without flags, sometimes with uniformed Russian personnel on board. Elsewhere, as we know, French authorities have detained a Russian-linked tanker suspected of launching drones that we know shut down Copenhagen airport in Denmark. NATO countries have been subjected to Russian cyber attacks, disinformation, provocation, Foreign Minister, for many years, particularly in your country. I mean, it has been argued that NATO and Russia have for a very long time been engaged in a shadow war. Are you already at war with Russia?
Yeah, we can say that the aggression has started already years ago against Europe, and the plan was published already in 2007 during the Munich Security Conference when Putin held a speech and said that his plan is to eliminate the root causes, and the root causes for him is the collapse of the Soviet Union. And we saw 2008 the Georgian invasion, and now 20% of Georgian territory is still occupied. Then we saw as well 2014, the Ukraine war started with invasion to Crimea and some eastern part. They're still occupied. And what I was concerned then, and many others in our region, is that the European response was very weak, because still there were pretty many leaders who were thinking that let's talk to Putin, let's cooperate on an economical level, and we can control him somehow. But unfortunately, we were right, we can't. But now I see as well that during the last couple of years that Europe has been, waking up, and as well US is there, and now we are finally investing heavily to our defense. I do hope that it is not like 10 years too late, but at least we are doing that.
Well, let's talk about the reasons.
This is not surprise.
Let's talk about some of the reasons why European powers feel that they need to make a dash to rearm. I mean, President Trump recently said Ukraine can fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form. But at the same time, he added that US support, quote, depends on the circumstance. How do you interpret that statement? Does depends on the circumstance fill you with confidence when it comes to your nation?
I'm very confident if it's come to NATO, and these assurances and very clear messages from President Trump and US side we have witnessed during the last weeks again and again. What we see is that I do hope that President Trump will put as well the sanctions and pressure on Putin, as Europe is doing. We prepare now the 19th package of the sanctions. Now we have found as well the solution, how can we use the Russian frozen assets, which located to Europe more than 200 billion euros. And one thing is clear, that President Trump is not going to spend the US taxpayers' money for the military support for Ukraine. But Europe has Russian frozen assets we can buy from US. And what we do hope what will happen in real life is to lift the restrictions for the weapons that Ukraine is asking, whether we're talking about tomahawks or whatever long-range capabilities. So this is the pressure what we need to put together on Russia.
Do you think Donald Trump has done Europe a favour to try and turbocharge the Europeans to stand potentially on their own here? Is there a viable alternative to NATO? Would you welcome a European army or a stronger Franco-British command, for instance, to fill any gaps left behind by, let's say, a more standoffish approach from the United States? I mean, what is the realistic timeline for Europe to defend itself without Washington, given, as you've said, Europe is so heavily dependent upon US technology?
I'm realistic, and my background is as well about defense, and we can have a different dreams, but in real life, transatlantic bond is really existential for us, but also for US. US economy is not working well without European Union and European countries. So what we need to do and what we have done, and President Trump was right already, yes, that Europe must take more responsibilities, investing to our own defense capabilities, but also about Ukraine. Estonia is one leading country as well, saying clearly already this spring that if there will be the security guarantees needed for Ukraine, so even as a bordering country for Russia, we are ready to participate boots on the ground military level. So this is something I welcome as a foreign minister of Estonia, that Trump has been very clear about Europe, that we cannot be as an old, fat, lazy cat that somebody else is coming to pour the milk to our can, and then we are just leaking. We need to invest heavily ourselves as well, and this commitment has been done amongst NATO allies this summer when we had the NATO summit.
We have, though, seen Donald Trump perhaps lay it on the line when it comes to how the Ukraine war may come to an end. We have seen an uptick in recent months in Ukrainian military activity in Crimea, annexed, of course, back in 2014 by Russia. If Volodymyr Zelensky wants to end this war, Trump has suggested he may need to give up that peninsula, home of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, of course. Where does Estonia stand? Does it support Ukraine in this goal, even at the risk of escalating the conflict and potentially defying also Donald Trump?
It's hard to say what is the escalation if it's not escalation already what we see from the Russian side towards Ukraine, and also Putin is trying to heat up us as Europe, spoiling the frog, turning on the heat step by step. If you list everything hybrid, so-called, what Putin has been doing against Europe during the last 3 years, and put this list like 4 years back, we could escape maybe already Article 5. So we need to understand that Putin is not only after Ukraine, but also after Europe's security architecture. He has said it very clearly. So the only way out from here is to support Ukraine. And Estonia stands here in a very principled position about territorial integrity, about sovereignty, because our past has been spent 50 years under the Soviet occupation when we lost
understood, Foreign Minister, understood, but I'm sure you have an interest also in seeing peace return to Ukraine. Should Ukraine give up Crimea for the sake of peace?
Not, of course. It's finally the decision of Ukraine people. But there is a narrative that Putin wants to deliver, is that he's winning the war. And he's strong, but actually in real life, instead of 3-4 days special operation he planned, he is waging now more than 3 years full-scale war against Ukraine people without any strategic breakthrough. That's the truth. And he is not so strong as he wants to show, though we need to follow what Ukraine people ask, and we need to support them. This is the only plan what works. And then we must be ready as well to give the security guarantees for Ukraine, but for our region as well. And that's clear position from Estonian government, that the best and most efficient security guarantee is actually the full membership of NATO. But if you're not able to get it right now politically, we as Europeans, together with US, must put the skin in the game to assure that Russia won't start the war again. But there is no signs that Putin wants to have even the ceasefire right now, as we have witnessed during the last couple of months.
So I'd like to also talk about European relations with Russia, the Ukraine war, and the impact on European economies and regional politics as well, because Europe has spent decades relying on Russian energy, Chinese trade, and the American security umbrella. Now many are calling for higher defense budgets. But where does that money come from without taking away from safety nets, from social security, from welfare support in each of these given countries?
I totally agree with you that there has been strategic mistakes from European side already decades. If we are talking about investments to our defense and security policies and capabilities. But now we need to do more. And of course, Estonia has, as well as other European countries, the pension systems and the education and social systems. But we have decided to increase our defense investments from the next year already more than 5% of GDP. And all the other eastern flank countries doing the same thing, as Latvia, Lithuania, Poland. Finland is strong, and all the others are investing more. And of course, people asking that from where this money is coming. But we have as well very important decisions amongst the European Union that we are going to get rid of the dependence on Russian energy from the 2027. which is pushing our economies even more. So we need to find a way out about strategic cooperation with, of course, US, but also we have a outreach to the regions as Central Latin America, as well Africa, and also Indo-Pacific, that European Union actually is one of the largest and richest part of the world and a very strong economy. But there are many problems we need to solve as well about the over-regulations and many other things.
In the short term,
this is a real challenge.
It's a real challenge, and I appreciate that in the long term you may well find resources for energy coming from Latin America and elsewhere in the world, but nevertheless, huge portions of the economies of European nations have been diverted to bolstering security, to face off the potential Russian threat. And in many nations, austerity has been in place for many, many years, and that has only led to the growth of populism on the far right and the far left, which in many ways potentially weakens democracies in Europe, surely?
I think that Europe has a very strong roots and historical roots about democracy, how we see it. Of course, it's a different perspective on different places in the world. But you're right. We have a populistic wave coming, different countries all over the Europe. But the other way around, if we see the elections in Germany, which is actually the economical engine in Europe as the largest scale economy in Europe, the mandate is very clear for the new government and Chancellor Merz to improve the economical measures at the same time investing more heavily and historically to defense. So Europe is very much a very colorful picture about the different developments. But all this pressure to invest more heavily to defense, I think that people understand it finally. But it gives as well the opportunity for populists, if they're asking the questions about immigration, if they're asking the questions about the welfare and increase of the economy, because Europe's economy is not doing as good as it should. So this is a great, the problem what we need to solve, and every nation is struggling alone as well in this problem.
Do you think EU nations, NATO alliance members, need to flex their muscles a little bit more when it comes to China, for instance? We know that Russia has been able to circumnavigate many of Western sanctions with help from allies to the east, from China specifically. Do you feel that Western sanctions are failing? How would Estonia plug the gaps in current punitive measures against Moscow?
Estonia is one of the countries which are leading the sanction policies a bit to be more stronger against the Russian war machine. And of course, there has been many opportunities to find the ways how to get the other way around. But European Union also already preparing the 19th sanction package, and there are sanctions as well against the third countries' companies. We are preparing as well the tariffs policy about European Commission, which doesn't need consensus, because with sanctions we have a problem with making decisions, because it needs all 27 countries. But the tariffs policy doesn't need it, and it will follow for the 19th sanction package. And the third countries are the targets as well, because our main goal is to cut the money flow to Putin's war machine.
Foreign Minister, as we reach the end of our discussion, I wanted to turn our attention to further afield, to developments in the Middle East. You now stare Russian aggression in the face across your border. Surely you must be inspired by that to acknowledge the decades-long Israeli occupation of Palestinian land, and crucially to do something about that. Nevertheless, despite France, the United Kingdom and others recognizing the state of Palestine, Estonia hasn't done that. Why not?
Yes, indeed. We have not recognized Palestine as a state juridically, but we have been very supportive about two-state solutions. As well, we have a long-term commitment to support Palestinian authorities about building up the systems, and as well humanitarian support has been there. Estonia has been supporting and voting in favor last year as well about Palestine resolutions on the United Nations, and we joined with the declaration of the two-state conference during the UNGA week. So we are very, very practically there to find the ways out about the two-state solutions. I do hope that this is release of the hostages will be the first step about the ceasefire, and then the next steps with this peace plan will be following.
How can we, sorry, Foreign Minister, how can we talk about a two-state solution, though, when only one state is recognized?
We need to reach on that level because we have our own criteria about the recognition of the states. But for me, it's not a game on the political level. We need to have the real steps. And as we are witnessing right now, I do hope that this peace program or peace plan, what has been started, they will follow the next steps that also Estonia can recognize the Palestine as a state. But there are lots of preconditions what must be fulfilled, and one of them is the ceasefire, and next step is how to start the real peace negotiation.
I'm sure you understand that the very nations, earlier in our discussion, you said that Europe might be looking towards to enhance energy supplies. Nations in the global south and Latin America are also the very same nations that are accusing Estonia and other nations in the European Union of double standards in viewing Ukraine in one way, but seeing the Palestinian situation very, very differently. I mean, in many ways, people think that in withholding recognition, it just simply rewards collective punishment. Is this double standards?
Of course, they are not double standards because the situations and the situation is totally different. And I never put two things at the same level as a Russian aggression against Ukraine and also Hamas as a terroristic organization's behavior. But it doesn't help us globally that we blame each other on the double standards. We can find them everywhere if you're talking about the international public law. But we need to focus on the real situation. And we see what is happening in Gaza, what is happening between Israel and Palestine, and we all understand that this is a humanitarian catastrophe, what is there. So we need to deal with this. And then to find out as well the political solution that the two states finally can actually exist there, living together. But I don't see that it is coming very soon.
Foreign Minister, as we reach the end of our discussion, let me ask you this finally. If Russia was to violate your airspace again, let's say in the next 24 hours, tonight, let's say that, what immediate decision would you like to see the NATO alliance come to, and what decision would you and the Estonian government come to?
The procedures are there, the political will is there. Even the President Trump has said that if the planes are coming and there is a conditions and need to shoot them down, we will shoot them down, because we have everything ready for that.
Margus Tsahkna, Foreign Minister of Estonia, it's been a pleasure to speak to you. Many thanks for joining us on Talk to Al Jazeera.
Thank you very much.